Hello again, and thanks so much for joining us. It's time for another edition of the Mack Brown Show. My name is Jones Angel. He, of course, is the head coach of the Tar Heels, and we're going to be talking Carolina football for the next hour. So glad that you decided to join us, and we have a busy show. We're going to look back at that terrific, hard-fought win over BC this past Saturday that moves the Heels to 2-0. We will preview the upcoming matchup with Virginia Tech, another big-time ACC game, this time in Chapel Hill. And you'll hear a little bit of an interview with Greg Ellis, a great player from Coach Brown's first tenure here in Chapel Hill, and quite honestly, one of the best defensive players that's ever done it here for Carolina. But let's start with this past Saturday. And, Coach, man, it was a battle until the very end, but Carolina prevailed over Boston College. Hard-fought, 26-22 victory. Boy, just a big-time road win for your team.
Jones, it really was. I'm proud of the guys, proud of how hard they fought, how physical they were. One of the questions for the week is Boston College had a lot of returning offensive linemen. They had a lot of guys back on defense. They got some transfers. They're very physical, and would we be able to hang in there with them? And we did, toe-to-toe with that physicality throughout the night. And really and truly, this game we would have lost last year. Yeah. You go back to Virginia Tech, 6 overtimes, we couldn't finish it. We couldn't make the play. Pittsburgh, overtime, we couldn't make the play. And in this one, even though there were times that we could have put the game away earlier, we didn't finish, but Tyrone Hopper presses their quarterback, the big guy throws us the ball, and Trey Morrison makes a tremendous play to really finish the game. So that's who we, and then we got the onside kick. So we're getting more confidence. We're learning more about how to win. We're ranked 8th and 9th in the polls, and it's way early. And I told the guys, you've got the appreciation of people in college football, but now you've got to earn the right to keep it. Mm-hmm. But I'm really, really proud of the way the guys came away. And my gosh, after 21 days off, a lot of question marks. There's so much to fix. But it's easier to fix when you're 2-0.
Sure, absolutely. Coach, you said learning how to win. Is there any other way to do that other than just going and doing it and being in these tight situations and eventually getting that corner turned?
No, you can't learn how to win until you get in a tight game, and usually on the road. And your season is determined by those tight games. We win 10 games last year maybe if we beat a Clemson. We beat Virginia Tech. We beat Pittsburgh on the road. So we had opportunities that we didn't finish. So you win 7 instead of 10 because you lose the close game. So Saturday was a real learning experience for us in a positive way. You can't learn those things in scrimmages. You can't learn those things in practice. You have to learn them when you're in trouble in a ball game late where someone steps up and makes the play. We talk about be the one. Well, that's what Trey Morrison was on Saturday at the end of the game.
Coach, you mentioned a lot when you returned to Chapel Hill about really making a point to enjoy the process more, enjoy the wins more, just enjoy being around a college team and doing what you're doing. You said you felt like you had lost that a little bit later in your career at Texas. I would think this might have been a game that back to the Texas days you'd have been more worried about, didn't do this. But you said after the game you were going to make a point to really enjoy this one, at least until it was time to look ahead to Virginia Tech. Did you stay true to those words?
Well, I did. I enjoyed it. I wanted the players to enjoy it. There's nothing better in football than that win on the road where you're together in the locker room. You get on that plane and come home together and celebrate and see the tower lit blue that these guys did. They accomplished that during the day, so it is fun. Then I ripped everybody yesterday after we got home about too many penalties and why didn't we finish and why don't we have more patience and all the things that the fans will ask. I was asking yesterday too. So, but that's fair. One of the coaches said, "I thought you were going to enjoy these wins." I said, "I am. I enjoyed it enough. I want to do it again next week. So that's why we got to fix all these things we messed up."
That's right. There's a time to enjoy and then a time to rip. You just got to have time to do both of them.
Absolutely.
Coach, a couple of things from the game itself. BC threw the ball a lot, but the rushing totals were 176 to 40. Big advantage for your team. And any time you can do that, it seems to be that you'll have a good chance to win the game.
Yes, most of the time in my career, I mean, like maybe only 3 times have we outrushed the opponent and lost the game, unless turnovers are out of whack and other things. So running the ball and stopping the run is so critical in our business. I was looking at last year's Virginia Tech game. They ran it for 254 yards. We ran it for 143. And that just shows you we could have still won, but you're more likely to win if you're running the ball better. And BC really threw us off guard because Coach Bateman, the defensive staff, he and Tommy Thigpen prepared for them to line up with their big back Bailey and hammer us and be balanced and use play action and try to slow the game down and keep the ball. And none of that happened. Yeah. They threw it 56 times, and it shocked us. So we had a 5-man line prepared. We had 4 defensive backs, and we had to ditch all that and then go to a nickel defense early. And then Jaquarius comes up limping there early in the game, so we got to put Weldon Spotsville in at nickel. So the guys had to do a lot of adjusting during this game in the first and second quarters that we weren't ready to do, really. Caught us off guard.
Coach, to that point, your defense in the second half only allowed 151 yards and only 6 points. So what was the message to the defense at halftime that seemed to settle them down a little bit and have a better performance in half two?
The biggest message was that here's what they're doing. So let's get after it. Let's understand. We missed it. It's the trouble with an opening ball game. We didn't know what Syracuse was going to do either side of the ball. We didn't know what BC was going to do. New staff, and we'd seen them for a couple of weeks, but they played us completely differently than they had the first 2 ball games with Texas State and Duke, and that's part of early season. That's part of the crazy COVID 2020. We'll have the same this weekend with Virginia Tech. We're not sure who's going to play. We're not sure. We haven't seen their defensive coordinator for the first 2 weeks. So a lot of things are different now, but you got to handle sudden change. You've got to handle adjusting to things on the run, and you got to give credit to Coach Hafley. Their team played hard. Jerkovic, their quarterback, was hard to bring down. Yeah. They say he's 6'5", 225. I think they need to go back and reweigh him. He looked a lot bigger than that to me when he knocked me down on the sideline over there. And the tight end, Hunter Long's as good as there is in the country. So those 2 guys had a tremendous performance. And I've never seen a quarterback get hit as many times, break as many tackles, and still have the ability to turn and throw the ball downfield. So look out for Boston College. Yeah. He's really a good player. I think they've got him for 3 years. So he's going to change that program completely.
Yeah, Tar Heels took a good punch from the Eagles, but we're standing at the end. Coach, one last thing before we take our first break, and you mentioned this earlier, an area that has been clearly frustrating for you has been penalties. Carolina had 10 in this game for 96 yards. That's 19 through 2 games so far, and I'm sure that number is too high for your liking.
It is, and part of that's opening games. I remember last year, the first 2 games, we did the same thing. And you look at Boston College, they're in their 3rd game. They're a disciplined team. They're a well-coached team. They had 12 penalties. Yeah. So sometimes, Jones, you get officials that throw more flags than not. And then today, what we do is yesterday we take out all the penalties that we thought were penalties, and we teach our players that why these things were called and why we can't do them. Then we take the ones that we didn't think were penalties, and we send them to the conference office and ask them to tell us what they thought, because we need to know if this is going to be called, this isn't the way we're teaching it. Or did they miss the call? So a lot of that happens with coaches across the country every Sunday and Monday after a ball game.
He's the Hall of Fame head coach of the Tar Heels. This is his show. It's the Mack Brown Show, and we're just getting started. We're going to go to commercial break, but have a lot more to do with the head coach of the Tar Heels after this. It's the Mack Brown Show from Learfield, IMG College. Back with you on the Mack Brown Show. Thanks again for being here, talking about a 2-0 top 10 football team. The Tar Heels ranked all the way up to number 8 in the AP poll. Coach mentioned this earlier, number 9 in the coaches poll. ACC's got a lot of teams up there. Clemson, number 1, Notre Dame at 5, Miami comes in at 7. This week's opponent for the Tar Heels is Virginia Tech. The Hokies are 2-0. They are ranked number 19 this week in the AP poll, so we'll talk about that matchup with them coming up in a little bit. Let's get to our Champion Watch, brought to you by UNC Health, and the team at UNC Health is dedicated to caring for champions of all kinds. That includes you and your family. You can see more at their website, unchealthcare.org/sports. And let's go to some of those statistical champions for the Tar Heels this past game. Michael Carter, 121 yards rushing for him. It is the first 100-yard game of the season for the Heels. It is his first this year and sixth of his career. Sam Howell, now with 41 career touchdown passes. That ties Mitch Trubisky for fifth all-time in Carolina history. Think about that, Sam. It's 2 games in to his sophomore year. Chaz Surratt led the Heels with 8 tackles. He had a sack and a pass broken up. Tamon Fox, 2.5 tackles for loss, a sack and a forced fumble. And Coach mentioned Trey Morrison earlier with 6 tackles, a PBU, and that big interception. And by the way, that interception does not count in the stats as an interception, with it being a 2-point play. Those do not go down in the official game stats, but we know how important that was for Trey and the Tar Heels. Coach, be interested in you, after you and your staff broke down the tape, who were some of those standouts that you saw on the different sides of the ball that really jumped out in Carolina's big win?
Well, number one, Jones, it's stupid that it doesn't count in the stats when Trey Morrison intercepts a ball and runs it back to win the game. So
that's right.
We need to change that. Whoever's doing the stats, we need to change them and help them with how important that was. They're obviously not coaching.
That's right.
If they were coaching, they would know that was an important stat. All those guys played so well. Chaz Surratt's all over the field. Our defensive player of the game was Trey Morrison. But because of what we just said, Tamon Fox and Tyrone Hopper were all over the quarterback all day. They were pressing him. Jeremiah Gimmel's a leader. He plays that way all the time. And our 2 down people up front did a good job, because when they tried to run the ball, they couldn't run it. And good for them that they looked at our defense and said, we're going to have to throw it to beat them. So all of those are good. Our special teams player of the week was Jonathan Kim. He continues to kick off out of the end zone, which is it's a real positive for us. And it doesn't seem to matter what the wind is or anything else. He just steps up and kicks it and does really well. And you mentioned him, but the 2 backs were great during the ball game. But Michael Carter was the offensive player of the game. And you can't have backs that make that many yards rushing unless those offensive linemen are blocking well. So a lot of people get on the offensive linemen about the sacks. We had 4, it's too many. Sometimes we might have held the ball too long. There were coverage sacks. It's not always their fault. Maybe missed a twist early. But proud of the offensive line, and especially a line that played without Josh Azudu again. So those guys did a great job as well. Ben Kiernan keeps punting the ball so well. So we've got a lot of guys that stepped up and played well enough to win on Saturday afternoon.
Coach mentioned Jonathan Kim. He is now 11 for 11 on kickoffs this year that have been sent through the back of the end zone for touchbacks. They're doing exactly what the coaches have asked of him. Coach, we're going to get to questions from Tar Heel fans in our next segment, but by far the most asked question this week was about a specific play in the game, so I thought I'd go ahead and address that with you now. It was the kickoff when Michael Carter called for a fair catch. The ball hit the ground. Carter picked it up. The play was blown dead, and the Heels had to start inside the 5-yard line. Then eventually that was when Sam was hit from behind. BC picked up an interception and a touchdown a couple of plays later. Carolina fans were a little confused about what exactly the ruling was, and they were hoping that you might be able to clear up what exactly happened on that sequence.
Yes, Jones, a few years ago, the Rules Committee felt like there were too many concussions on kickoff return, kickoff coverage. So therefore, they tried to change the rule where you would have fewer returns. And that's all worked. It's happened. It's good. In this case, this rule needs to be changed, in my opinion. The rule on a punt is if you fair catch the ball and the ball hits the ground and rolls, you get the ball wherever it stops. The rule on kickoff, weirdly enough, is if you call for a fair catch and the ball hits the ground, if the ball rolls into the end zone, it's a touchback. But if the ball is touched, and it's a live ball, so you have to touch it. This one hit at the 11. You have to touch it. If you don't touch it, they get the ball there. If you touch it, you take the ball wherever you touched it. So the rule is to take care of the returner and have fewer returns, but I think the rule should be like the punt. If you fair catch it and it hits, then you get it at the 25. because what happened with Michael is the ball was kicked. He's one of our smartest players, one of our best players. He raised his hand to fair catch it because they got 4-second hang time on their kickoffs, and we thought they were really good at covering. So we were going to take the ball to 25 unless it was a squib or a sky kick. And then the ball fishtailed on Michael, and it went down so quickly he didn't get a chance to go up and catch it, and therefore it put us back at the 6-yard line. So I don't like the rule. I think it puts young guys in a really tough spot. If they're encouraging us to call fair catches so it's safer, then let's make the rule where a guy can call a fair catch. And if for some reason, wind or what happened, he can't get to the ball, he misjudges it, then we shouldn't be penalized like we were, in my opinion, on Saturday.
And, Coach, that turned out to be a big play in the game. BC then had the short field with Carolina's defense, which had been slowing down Boston College, particularly in the red zone up to that point. But BC had the short field, and it felt like a different game from that point on.
It was. It gave them some confidence. I'm not sure they felt like they had a chance to win till then, but when that happened, you could see I would say the crowd exploded. They didn't. The cardboard faces, the cutouts just sat there. They didn't move. But the noise was more. But their sideline did explode, and they got a lot more momentum coming out of that, and it hurt us because it obviously gave them a chance to look like they had a chance to win the game.
Couple of more notes here before we go to break, just for your information more than anything else. First time the Heels have ever started a year 2-0 with both the wins being ACC victories, which is the case right now for Carolina. And going back to last year, Carolina now on a 5-game winning streak. That is the longest since 2015 when the Heels won 11 straight that particular year. And Carolina's now put up 400 or more yards of offense in 10 consecutive games. So some good streaks that are rolling on for the Heels right now as they get ready to see Virginia Tech this weekend. We'll talk about the Hokies, plus we're going to start getting to your questions for the head coach of the Tar Heels after this break. It's the Mack Brown Show from Learfield IMG College. Back with you here on the Mack Brown Show. Thanks so much for being with us. No matter how you're listening today or tonight, maybe it's on the Tar Heel Sports Network, maybe you're listening through the Go Heels app, maybe you're listening through the TuneIn app, maybe you're listening on the Carolina Insider podcast channel, and it's sometime in the future. No matter how you're listening, we appreciate you joining us and talking Tar Heels with us today. We're going to get to some of your questions for Coach Brown in just a second. Wanted to mention two more just statistical notes from this past weekend. Javonte Williams, now 5 touchdowns this season already through 2 games. He had 5 touchdowns total his freshman year, and then 5 touchdowns again total his sophomore year. So he's already reached that single-year high for him in just 2 games. And with Trey Morrison running back that interception for the 2-point conversion at the end of the game, the only time the Tar Heels have had a similar play in their history was a returned blocked extra point that was returned for 2 points. That was back in 2003 against Wake Forest. Lionel Green returned a blocked extra point for 2 points. That's the only time that it happened in school history. So something unique for sure that happened on Saturday, and one of, if not the most important play of the game for the Heels.
Yeah, and Jones, let me mention to our fans too, there's some plays that go unnoticed that change the game. And Javonte on a sack fumble where we were going in to score and we messed it up.
Yep.
There are 5 Boston College players that have a chance to get to the ball, and he's behind them, and he runs and splits them and dives on the ball about the 40-yard line to give us a chance to punt instead of them having great field position. So there's so many plays like that these guys are making that just go unnoticed, but that could be considered one of the key plays in the ball game. Just because of his extra effort and toughness.
Absolutely. That's a terrific point. That could have been worst case scenario, a scoop and score for Boston College, or perhaps a great field position for the Eagles, and Javonte's hustle turned that around. An excellent point, Coach. All right, let's get to some questions, and a reminder, you can send them in through the week. You can either tweet right to me. It's at Jones Angel. Angel has 2 L's at the end. You can send an email to asktheheels@gmail.com. Due to our COVID situation, we are recording with Coach Brown on Monday morning scheduled for air on Monday evening. So the earlier you can get those in on the weekend, the better. And we do have a bunch of questions to get to. And Coach, we're going to start with one that really doesn't have anything to do with football. This is from Amy Davis. And of course, with the election coming up in about a month, Amy said, what is Carolina doing? What is Carolina football doing to try to encourage players and staff to get registered to vote, and then to also make sure that they exercise that right coming up in early November?
Amy, it's a great question, and we have had voter registration set up over here at the stadium so all of our players could register to vote. So all of them have, and that's really, really important. And then over the next week or so, we're going to bring in 2 different speakers to just talk about how to vote. I did something, a video to talk to our state about how to vote with Coach Williams, and we showed that to the players. But we're going to have 2 Zoom meetings with people to talk to them about we want them to vote and to talk to them about how to vote. And then on the if they want to vote early, they can. We'll go over that. But also if they want to wait, and then on election day, we're going to make sure that each one of them have an opportunity to set up an easy way for them to vote. So it's really important. It's something early in my career, I didn't vote. I wasn't aware of the importance of all of us voting in America, and that's something that young people need to understand, that they're in charge of choosing our leadership for this country. And that I always thought, well, my vote didn't matter. And if enough people say that, then it's not good. It's not healthy. So, and as a football coach, I wasn't Republican or Democrat because I had enough people mad at me anyway. I didn't need to pick a political party to make the other half mad. So I really wasn't a guy who voted. I coached. Right. And they always told me, go to the Capitol, hang around their parties, hang around their meetings. When they get ready to vote, you get out of there, man, because you got to leave. But I think it is important for us as leaders and mentors of these young people to encourage them to have a say about the leadership in our country moving forward.
Good question, Amy. Let's call that our Cruisers question of the night, brought to you by our friends at Cruisers, your fast and friendly local convenience store. Cruisers, let's go. And Coach, now let's go to some questions more on the football field. This one comes from Christine, and Christine wondered, how can Carolina get Daz Newsome more involved in the offense? Daz has 3 catches so far, Coach, through 2 games.
Yeah, it's Christine, it's a good question. We've looked at it yesterday, and it's funny, we've got enough skilled people right now. It's hard to get the ball to all of them, but yeah, that's one thing that was missing for sure on Saturday against Syracuse. At least he had his touches with the punt returns, because we had a lot of punt returns, and he made a lot of yards in the latter part of the game. But Daz is playing hard. He's playing well. Interestingly enough, we had Toe Groves in on one play that was a Daz play that got a flare for about 15 yards to the left, and we threw a ball that just a little underthrown in the end zone to Josh Downs. So when you play more people, you never know when a ball's going to be checked down or when a ball's thrown in your area. So interestingly enough, that he got 1 touch during the game, and while he was out, his position got 2 other touches. So, and the same with Garrett Walston. Garrett's a good player. He blocked and did so many good things during the ball game. We're continuing to work ways to get the ball to him. But Phil Longo's got a tough job when you got a lot of good players.
That's right.
And it's hard to keep them all happy because there's only 1 ball, and we checked it, and they will not let us use 3 or 4 every play so everybody can get their touches.
That's a good problem to have when you have so many good guys to get the football to. Coach, let's do one more, and then we'll head to break. This is from Josh, and Josh wanted to know where you have seen Michael Carter improve the most during your time at Carolina.
Josh, he is a tremendous leader. He's one of the best leaders on our team. So I would say that, number 1. Number 2, he's so strong for a smaller guy, and he's got really good patience and vision. You know, Javonte will run over you. Yeah. Michael's going to stop, he's going to watch, and he can go from here to there very quickly. So he has a tremendous start, and that's what makes him so good. So he'll stand and look like he's not doing anything, and then poof, he's gone. and that's what I love about watching Michael run.
Coach, we're going to have, after this break, an interview with one of the great defensive players during your first tenure here in Chapel Hill, Greg Ellis. And Greg, now a head coach himself. I know he spoke at your end-of-year banquet last season at the end of the year, and just a terrific Tar Heel and a terrific football player as well.
Yes, Greg Ellis is he's one of the best to ever play in the NFL for the Cowboys or here, but he's a better person. He's done so many amazing things with his family and mentoring kids, and he's been a movie producer.
Yep.
He's raised so much money for charities. He's given back so much, and now here he is coaching college football. So he's just an entrepreneur. He's a guy that I love. He had an outstanding message to our players last spring or last last fall, I guess, when we had our banquet at the end of the year. But I love this guy, and he is what you coach football for, because I get more out of these guys than they get from me. And Greg Ellis has taught me so much, and I'm so proud of him and love everything he stands for.
So after this break, you'll hear that conversation with Greg Ellis. When that is finished, we'll take another break and come back with more questions for Coach. All coming up after this on the Mack Brown Show from Learfield, IMG College. Back with the Hall of Fame head coach of the Tar Heels, Mack Brown. My name is Jones Angel. Thanks so much for being with us today. And quick question before we get to some questions from you, and it's, do you know any Tar Heel fans that work selflessly to improve the lives of others and their communities? If you do, LS Tractor would like to know about them. LS Tractor and the Tar Heels have partnered up to recognize hometown heroes from throughout the state of North Carolina. You can visit goheels.com/hero, nominate someone you know for a chance to be recognized later this year. LS Tractor, a proud partner of Carolina Athletics. All right, let's get to some more questions for Coach. We're still going to preview Virginia Tech as well as we move through the final pieces of the Mack Brown Show today. Coach, a question from David Reynolds. This is via Twitter that David sent this one in and wanted to know, are the coaches still living at home, or is there some unique living situation with your coaches to try to keep them as far away from different people as possible, considering COVID right now?
David, great question, because we've tried to create our bubble very much like the NBA, and our guys and our staff have done a tremendous job. But no, we go home. Sally, my wife Sally, did not travel with us this weekend because she felt like that it would be safer for her to stay at home, and if some point I got sick, I could be upstairs, she could be downstairs, I could be isolated, but she would be there to take care of me. But we've just asked our players and our coaches and our staff to be accountable and wear your mask and social distance, and even when you're home. And now we're getting tested 3 days a week. We got tested this morning, we get tested Wednesday after practice, and then we get a test on Friday, and usually learn about 9 o'clock on Friday night if someone is not going to be able to coach or work or play on Saturday afternoon. So it's very different, it's very unique, but we've learned that if you're accountable, if you wash your hands and sanitize and keep your distance and use your mask, that the risks are very low. And that's what we've asked our players and our staff to do, to just make sure that we keep the risk very low. And our coaches' families, our staff's families aren't going to school. They're at home. So really and truly, if they're clean in their bubble, everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. I'm trying to stay from here to my office to home as much as I can and do nothing else. And basically that's what our coaches are asked to do as well. And our guys have been incredibly good about wearing their mask out at practice and on the field. And we've got a rule that unless you're playing, you have to have your helmet on or your mask up, one or the other. And right now they're trying to do everything right because they know they want to play.
Coach, how did things go travel-wise for your team? It was the first travel experience for Carolina, considering with the COVID protocols in place. How did all that go for you guys?
It's different. It's more difficult. They had to wear their N95 mask on the bus to go to the plane, and then a couple hours on the plane up to Boston, and then on the bus again. And they can't hydrate, and that's such a key point. I think we only had one player that got a few cramps during the game, so it's pretty good considering we didn't get to hydrate as much as we normally like to during the day on Friday. But the hotel was good. We social distanced. We had 2 at a table while we were eating. The hotel setup was actually better in Boston than it is in Chapel Hill for us right now, because we had enough room to have our team meeting before the game, and we had enough room to all eat together. And we had to grab and go when we were here. So that's part of the home field advantage, though, I think, is it's just more uncomfortable to go on the road. And all of our young staff, students, got on a bus and they took 12 hours to get to Boston. So. Wow. A lot of people are being really, really dedicated to try to make this thing work. And I've just been so overwhelmed by the way that people are trying to take the extra step to make sure that we have a chance to play and play safe.
Coach, last thing before we take our final break, and we'll preview Virginia Tech after this. You mentioned this a little bit in one of your answers earlier in this segment, but I think a lot of people think about who's available to play when it comes to COVID, but it could also come into play with your staff. And we've seen this. Virginia Tech has dealt with this. Florida State's head coach, Mike Norvell, had to miss a game due to COVID. So you guys do have a plan in place. Certainly we hope this plan doesn't have to happen. But if you could not coach a game, you do have a plan in place. Is that correct of what would happen?
Yes, Jones. I've sat down with all the coordinators, and we've got a person that is ready to step in and coach at every position. Now, we're not telling everybody who that is right now. We're telling the people that would be in that position. Simply because we don't want to be disruptive on the staff, and who would take my place, and would there be some people that got mad because somebody else took it instead of this person. And so it's easier for me to try to stay safe and have low risk and not have that come up. And it would mostly impact your coordinators. But the NCAA did help us with a rule that if, for say, our running back coach gets sick and can't coach, we can take an analyst or a quality control coach who's working with him that isn't legally able to coach on the field, and transfer his power to the field where he could coach until the running back coach comes back. And you can do that in each position. So we've got a plan in place that hopefully we never have to use.
That's right. Good to be prepared and hopefully never have any of those plans come to fruition this year.
And Jones, that could come up Saturday morning. It could come up Friday night. I mean, you could be calling a Coach Bateman saying, Jay, you're positive, you got to go home. And the last thing, I know we got to go, but the last thing is, if someone had a positive after we got to Boston, they would have had to get in a car and drive back home because they could not be on a plane having a positive. So it's there are a lot of people making a lot of sacrifices to make this work.
Absolutely, and so far Carolina has done so safely and successfully. Heels 2-0 through 2 weeks with Virginia Tech coming up. We'll talk about the Hokies when we return to wrap things up on the Mack Brown Show from Learfield IMG College. Carolina and Virginia Tech, third game of the season for each one of these teams. Both these teams are 2-0. Carolina with the victories over Syracuse and BC. For Virginia Tech, it has been wins over NC State and Duke. And Coach, certainly the stat that jumps off the page with the Hokies is those rushing yards. 696 rushing yards through 2 games so far. Clearly dedicated to the run and very, very good at it.
Yeah, they've got an outstanding offensive line. They rushed for 254 against us last year. But obviously these two teams knew they were going to rush. They both got good run defenses, and they didn't care. They just lined up and ran the football. So we thought that Boston College was going to run it, and they didn't. There is absolutely no doubt this weekend that Virginia Tech is going to run it.
Mark it down.
Yes, you can mark it down. So I'm going to tell the players, you won't have to be surprised during the first quarter. And they've got the good offensive line. They've got 3 quarterbacks that can all run. They've got a transfer back and Herbert from Kansas that can fly. Yep. And he's averaging 12 yards per touch. I mean, I've never seen anything like that. So he's a special player.
Coach, last thing, you'll have approximately 3,500 fans in Kenan Stadium on Saturday. I know that's about 48,000 fewer than you'd like to have in there, but it will be nice to have some Tar Heel support in the crowd, to be sure.
Yes, and our administration's done a good job of trying to be fair and get some students and get some of our loyal fans and season ticket holders and people into the game, which is really cool. But most importantly, our families of the players get to come. And that's what was missing at the opening ball game with Syracuse. It was missing up at Boston College. So I'm so happy that those parents and families can come and watch their sons and brothers and sisters play now, because that's really important. And I think it's safer for mental health. It's safer for physical health. And they just need to be here. A lot of these parents have never missed an event that their sons have played in. And that was hurtful in the first 2 games. So I know they're excited about this weekend.
It will be Carolina and Virginia Tech at noon in Kenan Stadium on Saturday. Radio-wise, we'll be on the air, get you ready for the pregame show starting at 11 a.m. Coach, as always, thank you for your time today, and look forward to talking with you again next week.
Thanks, Jones.
That's the head coach of the Tar Heels. It's his show, Mack Brown Show, from Learfield, IMG College.